But I am Hope McCutcheon. Nice to see everyone. And I know, so Elizabeth's here first time. Anyone else here first time?
It's my first time too.
Okay, how do you say your name? Is it Demir?
Demir, yeah.
Demir, nice to meet you, Demir.
Nice to meet you all too.
Yeah. Well, this event called Charlottesville Entrepreneurs and Espresso was birthed back in 2015, I believe. And our original home up until COVID was the iLab, which we're very grateful for the opportunity to be able to convene there. And then we missed March for obvious reasons, and then switched to the Zoomiverse in April. So we've been able to really pivot this event online. And there's a number of different organizations that help pull all this together, and I'm very grateful for their partnership. But that is CIC, which later during announcements I'll have these organizations share, but the Community Investment Collaborative, the Central Virginia Small Business Development Center, the Charlottesville Business Innovation Council, CBIC, and then finally we are sponsored by the Batten Institute. And that is, their partnership is what's really helped us gain access to iLab and whatnot, and different speakers. Setup of today as we begin with what we call an early stage business or startup that shares about their business, and then they actually have an ask for the audience. And so you guys get the opportunity to help him or her, their business, solve a problem or a question that they have for growth to really help them move on. And then after that, we have a crash and learn. So we have a seasoned entrepreneur that shares their crash and learn stories. And that's always fascinating, no matter what your industry or theirs. It's always really, really cool to hear stories that you might not hear otherwise. They're not necessarily out there broadcasting the mistakes they've learned from. So, and then after that, we do announcements on, and I'll get to all that. And then there's opportunity for some networking at the very end in different rooms. So with that, here's a couple asks. You can obviously have, most of you guys by now probably figured out Zoom. It almost seems like we can't survive without some sort of video conferencing, but you can have gallery view or speaker view. But because of the speaker view, I asked that as the speakers are speaking, just have your phone on mute, which I think all of you do anyway, and then just unmute when you want to talk. And that way it controls the speaker view. So with that, I will go ahead, unless there's any questions. Does anyone have any questions about any of that? Okay, cool. So I'm going to start with our early stage. I wanted to welcome Mercy Best and Steam Kit. Actually, I don't know. I've only seen it written. I'm now realizing I don't know if I've said it.
Yeah, that's correct. Steam Kit.
Steam Kit. And a little bit about Mercy. So first of all, Mercy and I met at a grocery store in Pantops and had a fun conversation once upon a time and connected on LinkedIn. So when Carolina with CIC recommended her as a speaker, and I think Cameron has also mentioned you before, I was like, oh my gosh, I totally know her. I had no idea you had this business. I think we talked a lot about what you do with your PhD program. But it's cool that she has a big passion for helping. And so she grew up in Richmond. She went to William & Mary, got her bachelor's in neuroscience, and which is something I love. And then she went to UVA for her master's. So that's how she got here to Charlottesville. She got her master's in biological and physical science, and now she's getting her PhD in pharmacology. While those pursuits of getting your PhD, which I imagine is incredibly demanding, she also started a business. So she started a business that she's going to share today called Steam Kit. And it's a really neat company, and I'm really excited to have you share about it. So Mercy, you have the floor.
Thank you so much for that awesome introduction, Hope. Good morning, everyone. As Hope mentioned, my name is Mercy Best, and I am the founder of Steam Kits. So I'm just going to jump right into my ask, and then I'll say it again at the end just to circle back around. So today my ask is for help with developing a product and marketing strategy that positions this product for different customer segments. So as Hope mentioned, I am a fourth-year graduate student at the University of Virginia. I'm actually in the Biomedical Sciences PhD program, and by way of that program, I earned my master's in science So I will earn my degree in pharmacology once I complete my dissertation studies, which centralize Alzheimer's disease. So Alzheimer's disease, as many of you may know, is a common brain disorder, and it's the most common one. And unfortunately, right now, there are no effective therapeutics or drugs that cure the disease. So my project seeks to delay or maybe even prevent the accumulation of this thing named tau, which is inside of all of our brain cells. And so tau is normally functioning well, helping our brain cells to be stable. But about 20 years before a person starts presenting the cognitive and memory deficits that come along with Alzheimer's disease, their tau starts to accumulate and clump up and cause so many different problems. And it's one of the earliest events or signatures of the disease progression. And so I have some ideas about how this may be happening, and hopefully I want to publish those findings within the next 2 years and officially become a PhD scientist. So I actually had an early start into science. I first became interested through a very unique opportunity I received as a middle school student in Richmond, Virginia. So I was able to spend multiple summers at the University of Richmond, actually. I worked in a research lab. I was able to get my hands wet and really think and realize what it would take to become a scientist. And this was through the Math and Science Investigators Program that was directed by the late Wade Robertson. And so this was very interesting for me because while I was in a lab, learning about science, I had never seen a Black or a woman scientist at the time. I actually didn't meet my first scientist who happened to be a woman or Black until I was at college, at the College of William and Mary. And so it really underscored for me the value of having a supportive network. So my family members and my different mentors really affirmed me as a scientist, although I had never met one that looked like me. And so because of that, I wanted to actually create STEAM kits, which my goal with that is to provide similar opportunities for other students, specifically those who may lack access to educational enrichment. So what is STEAM Kits? STEAM Kits is an innovative education brand, and we solve a number of challenges within education. Right now, there's a lot of crises going on with education, and we believe that we have a number of solutions that can get young people excited about science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And so usually I'll throw the term STEM out. I'm sure many of you have been familiar with that. But the unique way that we highlight and amplify STEM is by integrating the visual and performing arts. And that's that A that we get our name STEAM Kits from. And so I actually get the privilege and honor to lead a team that has over 20 years of expertise in teaching, and they're all still highly connected through the kindergarten, through 12th grade, higher education, different educational industries we all kind of have our hands and feet in. And so notably, our team includes a former middle school assistant principal who's currently serving as an elementary school department chair. We also have a middle school teacher, and then we have a computer specialist who has a master's in computer science. And so we all bring our unique backgrounds and interests to really reimagine education with a vision to enhance educational experiences. And we do this by making STEM and arts go hand in hand. And so we seek to actualize this vision statement through our mission, which is to sell empowering research-based educational activities that make it easier than ever for young people to learn virtually at home with their families or physically distanced in person at daycare, schools, or out of school time programs and organizations. And these activities actually allow them to explore STEM and arts careers. And so the STEAM Kits customer is anyone who loves and appreciates education and is ready to engage with hands-on learning and exploration. And so how we do this is by taking subjects out of these little boxes. And so instead of just science time and math time, we're integrating the STEAM framework, and it's more effective use of time. As you know, students have a lot of trouble focusing at the computer screen. So if we could take these subjects out of silos, we think our approach will be very effective in empowering young people to increase their interest and their intention to pursue STEM careers. And so actually before we started this product, which is really behind me, we actually created an in-person company that was called STEAM Kits back in 2014. And this was the summer following my freshman year at William and Mary. So we actually were able to go and work at a Boys and Girls Club, and we performed a research study just to test the effectiveness of our program. And so we actually had the students complete the activities that are now boxed inside of this kit. And we published a study that has been peer reviewed showing that our activities can encourage the intention of students to pursue STEM careers. And so with all this great research, we still had a lot of challenges with that business because we couldn't develop a model that would consistently impact those without us burning out because we were physically needing to go into communities. And that was a challenge because both myself and one of our team members were pursuing our PhDs. So thankfully, when I moved to Charlottesville to start my graduate program, I connected with Cameron Nelson on LinkedIn. And we began some conversations surrounding scalability and sustainability. And it really encouraged me to turn that program into a physical kit that we have today. So to gain the startup funds and the expertise needed to switch to this product-based business, I enrolled in the City of Charlottesville in the Minority Business Program's Go Startup course. And obviously what I didn't expect when I enrolled in February was the pandemic, which led to the course graduation being delayed and the switch to the virtual format. Somehow through all of the craziness that 2020 has brought, I still maintained motivation and was able to work on STEAM kits during that time. I was even able to beta test the product and send out a number of kits to different families and obtain critical feedback that helped develop the product in its current form. And so what we do is we combine science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics, or STEAM activities, into these physical kits that we're now selling for $35 with free shipping. So behind me is a display of the first kit, Ice Steam Boss. It's a series of 5 core activities that will lead to the development of a fictional ice cream truck company. So we're also encouraging entrepreneurship. So the students explore the chemical science of designing ice cream, the musical technology of performing a jingle, the mechanical engineering of building a balloon-powered ice cream truck, the visual arts behind drawing a self-portrait and coding a logo, and the business math of calculating and pitching their ice cream truck company. So currently all 5 activities are boxed up and they're shipped at once, but we'll soon be launching a subscription-based model where customers could opt to receive only 1 activity a month or 1 activity a week at a discounted price. And we'll also soon be launching classroom packs. So instead of these little boxes, we'll be putting the materials inside drawstring backpacks and box those into a very large box that could potentially be passed out with the school lunches along the bus routes, or the teachers can directly pass out the kits to their students. And this idea was really cultivated after doing a number of customer interviews. I sat down with teachers and educators through the Community Investment Collaborative course that I'm currently enrolled in. And based on hearing some of their challenges that they're facing, we're pivoting to start classroom sets at the elementary grade level. And I'm going to be partnering with the director of STEM from a Petersburg school district who will order a classroom set for a few of her science teachers. And if this is effective, we will actually start pivoting to middle school sets and high school sets as well. So after looking at school as a market, we'll see how this is going to go. And what I've been learning throughout this challenging time is that all of these pivots kind of show that we could not have predicted 2020, COVID-19, the stay-at-home orders, the school closures, the shifts to virtual learning. It's a lot of challenges we've been navigating. But for me, studying to become a PhD scientist, I'm often thinking about, like, what if the cure for coronavirus is trapped inside of the mind of someone who didn't have access to the early exposure to science that I had growing up? So today it is my ask that you will help me develop this product marketing strategy so we can position this product for different customer segments, specifically families, schools, out of school time organizations. And I believe with your help through STEAM Kits, we'll be able to provide opportunities that support students as that next generation of scientists, technologists, engineers, and artists and mathematicians. And those will be that next generation that can solve some of these issues like coronavirus and anything else that comes up in the future. So I'm going to leave my information in the chat, and I would love to connect with all of you, and even reach out if you know someone who will be interested in not only purchasing a kit, but also helping me with this marketing idea. So let's all just work together to bring STEAM kits to families, schools, and out of school time organizations today. Thank you.
Wow, that was incredible, Mercy. You have great energy, and what a cool company. I love the real example, the ice cream truck example, is that makes it very easy to conceptualize what you do. So that's
and
one
that's
recommendation.
exactly what we want to do. We want to make things relevant. What we find a lot of times with the school systems now, the activities or the lessons don't reflect people's real lives. And that's exactly what we're all about.
Absolutely. That's really cool. Well, I want to open up the floor for anyone. Can anyone give Mercy some feedback on her marketing? She did disclose, I guess, a couple of different segments that you could see yourself marketing to. It sounded like parents and after school programs, and then it sounded like also elementary schools. Or you can clarify the segments and the sequence, and then I want to open up the floor to some ideas for you.
Yes, so the one that we've been trying to do now is the family unit itself, as a lot of people are becoming the teachers in their homes and they're learning, a lot about their student. But we've also found a number of challenges with this mass online marketing approach. And so based off of my network of knowing so many educators, I used to teach summer school, so I have a lot of connections within that field. I was finding that maybe it would be more advantageous for me to approach administrators or school districts as a potential market. And then obviously there's a number of out of school time programs like Boys and Girls Clubs, Big Brothers, Big Sisters, and different organizations that also could be another market as well.
Okay. So does anyone have some insight for Mercy or ideas or thoughts?
I have a question, Mercy.
Yes.
So first of all, thank you so much for bringing this to the group. Like, how exciting as a parent of a 5-year-old who's almost 6 and a 3-year-old who is trying to navigate this crazy time of having them at home. I personally am very excited about this. And it's funny that you should mention schools, because our elementary school here in the city has tried to do this very thing a couple of times. And it was like A for effort. I love that they're trying it, but I have to say, like, what we physically received was not very exciting. And as someone who, I'm like a consultant and a facilitator myself, and I'm trying to use like a box of artifacts to inspire participant, like, energy, enthusiasm for what they're about to do. It didn't really do that in my 5-year-old. And she is a very enthusiastic young lady. So even just like from what I can see here and on your website, like the colors, the brand, all of that, I think is a great starting point. I'm trying to look quickly on the website, but do you have like an MVP or like a prototype or kind of early kits that people can already get? Are you still in the early product phase? Like how quickly are you able, like, could I order one today?
Yes, you can order one today. And it's very interesting you mentioned a 5-year-old, because we have on the website, you'll see Ezekiel, the ice theme boss. We have a 5-year-old and his mom actually doing the ice cream making activity.
Okay.
So yeah, we do have the kits available. One thing that I would say that we could improve upon is the quality of some of the materials. And that would we would need more funding for that to just get some of those up to par. But you can order today. We have had 5 customers so far that paid, and then we sent out about 15 tester kits.
That's great. So like my immediate response or suggestion would be to directly reach out to the schools, because I think many people are trying this, or an avenue to get to the parents would be to the PTOs, because the PTOs are in overdrive right now, trying to provide what programming that they can and ongoing support. And even if this is positioned as like a box of activities for your kid to do for an hour, I think parents would take them up on it. And the PTOs have a lot of funding, or, not a crazy amount, but there's lots of dedicated dollars to supporting families right now. And so it could be a great way to test early, iterate, and especially get your name out in our local community. So
thank you so much for that,
awesome.
Sarah.
Some other ideas for Mercy?
I'll go. Mercy, I'm on the website right now, and it's terrific. I'm loving everything I'm seeing and hearing. And it's funny you talk about 2020 being what it's been. By way of history, can you go back, and maybe you said this already, but did you or did you give any consideration at the beginning? Did this start as a brick and mortar idea, like we've seen other educational concepts or STEM or STEAM concepts? Or did you go straight to the idea of we're going to produce a shippable product and put it in the hands of the user and the consumer?
No, Alex, I actually started with this in-person program, and that's what we thought would be, a lot more engaging, going into communities. We work with Boys and Girls Club, churches, libraries, and we would actually go in and do these same activities hands-on with the kids face-to-face. And actually, we did kind of predict, I feel like we predicted 2020 because Cameron and I, we actually met probably in 2016, and we started thinking about a shippable product, more so based off of feasibility of like, I physically cannot go into every community and teach these activities.
It's more scalable to do it like this.
It's a lot more scalable, more sustainable as well. And while I was in the process of finalizing and actualizing, that's when the pandemic happened. And I realized, wow, what I'm creating is not just like a fun idea anymore. It is a need. And a lot of people just express, especially teachers and educators, the virtual learning is just not working. And so they also just express the value of having tangible things that the kids can, engage with and hands-on. And the fact that it is individualized box, it could also function within the classroom. So, a lot of times in the class, you're usually sharing different equipment. You can't really do that right now. Everyone needs their own set. And so we see these working in the homes and then also in the schools as well.
I love the fact that, you've probably seen STEM Tree up in Northern Virginia or, Snapology, stuff like that. I love, they've all been forced to pivot. Well, you started really on the pivot already. And that, I think that puts you ahead of some others. And I love it, love it when a plan comes together. Right?
Thank you, Alex.
Dan, you had something?
Yeah, I was just going to say that, when I think about the people that I go to tech events with, which I'm a UX designer and UX coach. I also go to a lot of web developer meetups. I think any parent I know who's working in tech would love something like this. Something that kind of helps provide a tangible on-ramp for their kid. Because it's like when you work in tech long enough, you sort of forget what the on-ramp was for you to get to the point where you're at right now. And just that, and I'm sure from your education, like your lifetime of learning, like you've learned so much that it's probably imperceivable like where you started. So like just in terms of like finding more families to reach out to, I might even go reach out to some of the local technology events. Like there's the First Wednesdays, which is kind of like a virtual happy hour for developers. There's Shift Enter, which is a group of people who organizes events for people who are looking to transition into technical careers. Just things like those kinds of gatherings for people who are already working in tech. And anybody who's a parent in that group, I think they're going to look at this and they're going to love the opportunity to introduce their children to it, I think.
Thank you, Dan. So that was First Wednesdays and Shift Enter?
Yeah, those are the first two that come to my mind in Charlottesville. I think there may be more of a, there's also a Central Virginia JavaScript. That is a group of people who work with JavaScript both on the front end and the back end.
Thank you.
No problem.
Hi, Mercy. I think the idea is excellent. I think it has awesome potential, not just now, but even before the pandemic. I think the idea of subscription boxes was already kind of starting to take off. And the fact that, you're bringing the intellectual heft to it so you can kind of have real strong bona fides and go in. I mean, having that published paper, that's awesome. I think, really you just should maybe start working on both of those two target markets that you're thinking of. Just see which one you get the most traction and then lean into that one and then expand from there. I think, if you can get some some early success and then build on that, that's really maybe the way to go, is like get one school district and then that's going to get you into the parents, or maybe get another school district. So I'm not really a marketer, but I think we have some people that are really good at that. But, you know, I think you're a lot of feedback from your customers and then having some early wins that you can expand upon. So focus on those early wins and then build from there. But I think you get a lot of potential, even, you know, yeah, I see no reason why this wouldn't go nationwide. So really it's just like kind of creating something that's scalable and kind of standardizing the boxes and gradually expanding. But it looks great. It's really exciting.
Thank you, Alex.
We can maybe have time for one more if there's anyone else that has any guidance for Mercy. Anyone else?
I'm going to have a bunch, but because this isn't fair when I explain some things, hope later on. But Mercy, so that I can think about this a little bit before I start talking more, what's your biggest problem right now as far as you can think of?
I will say just crafting a quality inventory. So right now I'm just working out of basically this space. I, you know, sanitize everything properly and make sure I had this. But if I had a tangible workspace where I can box up a full inventory of kits, and then I will also say if I could add another problem, it would be the marketing perspective of I've been using social media, but I haven't been getting that, that viral or lots of engagement on that. So it's one, building a sustainable inventory that is quality, and then two, getting the noticeability from people. But from some of the advice I just received, I have a couple of people to start reaching out, PTOs, these different technology groups and so forth.
Okay, thanks.
So Alex said somebody needs to get you on Oprah. But Mercy's contact information is in the chat. So if you want to go ahead and screenshot that or grab that, then if you guys have more ideas for her or want to make some connections for her or whatever, I think eventually she's going to be looking for investors as well. So just any sort of guidance, advice, etc., her contact information is there. So, okay. Let's see. All right. So thank you so much, Mercy. Really appreciate that. So now I want to transition to our Crash and Learn speaker, John Stacy, and just a little bit about John. He actually is from Charlottesville, grew up here, spent quite a bit of time in Silicon Valley, and has a history of growing early stage companies, specifically with disruptive technologies and product innovation into category leading brands. And so he's held executive positions at Procter & Gamble and IBM, and is a founder or an early executive of a number of additional companies. And he also co-founded and advised or invested in a lot of startups, specifically in healthcare, in consumer products, in hyperspectral data analytics, and language learning. John is also an entrepreneur in residence at the Batten Institute's iLab and a guest lecturer on design thinking, product development, and disruptive innovation at Darden and McIntyre School. Fun fact about John, I asked him for one. In his very first day at P&G, he actually locked himself after hours in a stairwell. And there's quite a bit that he learned from that at the P&G headquarters, such as you need to listen to instructions on your first day about elevator hours, and don't panic when you sleep in a stairwell. So so that was early in his career, and now look at him now. You can come out on top. So so please help me welcome John Stacy.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Yeah, so you're going to find this was not fair setting me up with Mercy here, because Mercy, I'm going to explain a couple of things that aren't in that bio that are going to make some sense. I'll try to give a number of crash scenarios, but when you find out more of my background on the education side, I'm going to also try to shape it a lot around, because I see a lot of young parents here, and where a lot of the lessons learned in education, I think can come in here. Hope, keep me honest on the time. If there's about 5 minutes to go, if you can let me know that, that would be great. Okay. Just to let you all know, not only did I lock myself in the stairwell on my first day, but I got the CEO to let me out. Okay. Now, something I have to tell you was it was the future CEO of P&G. So, but just to give you a little background on it, what happened was I get there my first day, you know, they're giving you instructions on some things, and of course I'm not listening. And one of them was when the elevator stopped running. And so I get distracted. I'm working on some things, and all of a sudden I go, oh shoot, it's 6:35. They said the elevator stopped at 6:30. So I go running down the hall, push the button, nothing's responding. And I think, okay, I guess they just shut the elevators down. So I go through the stair door, and it closes behind me. This is on the 9th floor of the building. It closes behind me, and there's this really loud click as it closes. And I'm like, oh, I hope that button that you push during hours doesn't mean that this thing locks and that sort of thing. So don't even dare to try it. I go all the way down to the bottom, and there's this sign that basically says, if you go out this door, bells will go off, sirens will ring, dogs will respond, and that sort of thing. And so I think, okay, I'm not doing that. Go up to the next floor, try the door, locked. And I'm sitting there thinking, okay, my first night, I'm going to spend the night in the stairwell until this thing opens up at 7:30, and then I'll race back, get a shower, and I'll be okay. And so I'm thinking about that, and I thought, well, I'd go back up to the 9th floor, knock on the door, and see if there's anybody there. And by good fortune, a guy named A.G. Lafley, who later became the CEO, was a rock star CEO at Procter & Gamble. He was still working on the brand. I knock on the door, he opens the door, and I'm just like, bam, So listen to instructions and don't panic when it happens. Now, the reason I said this isn't fair, how many of you all, and when I ask this question with a college, nobody answers or raises their hand anymore. Sometimes with Darden, they do because of the age. How many of you all had Reader Rabbit as an educational software game when you were growing up? Anybody here? Sarah, all right, good. So Reader Rabbit was by a company called The Learning Company. And I had the good fortune of going there in the early 90s. So Mercy, everything I talk about, it's going to be completely different than what you're facing now, but hopefully I'll give some lessons on this that will apply, okay? So Learning Company, we became the leader in educational software. We were selling primarily at retail, if you will, because back then it was, you really didn't, in the mid 90s, you really didn't have much as far as online and that sort of thing. And we had an education business as well. And I'm gonna give some lessons from that. But then from the Learning Company, after we were acquired, and how many people here watch Shark Tank? Okay, you know who Kevin O'Leary is? Mr. Wonderful? Okay, well, he wasn't always the most brilliant guy in the world, in that he and his partner paid 14 times revenues for the Learning Company back in 1996 when they acquired us. And at another time I can explain how that happened. But one of the lessons on a sort of a crash and learn on this would be, the customer is not always right, but they are the ones who have the money. Okay, and how this tied to the Learning Company was part of the reason we were able to go from being the number 3 player in the space to number 1, was we were really the only company that realized that the person who was using the product was different than the person who was paying for the product. Okay, and in this case, all the retailers, all the other software developers, they thought the kid was the one who was buying the product. So everything was geared around that. And we realized, no, it's the parent. So again, what we did was we spent a tremendous amount of time doing one-on-one interviews with parents, really getting into their heads and understanding what was going on with everything from how did you position a product to how did you price a product. What were the things when you did get the parent's attention in the retail section of the store, you know, what were the first questions going through their minds once you got them to pick up the box? And I won't go into all the details on that, but what we developed was a very strong process for doing one-on-one interviews, not doing focus groups with people, because oftentimes with focus groups, you trick yourself into thinking you've got 10 opinions when really you've got one or two strong people who are leading the discussion and that sort of thing. So what we found was literally with doing 10 to 12 interviews with parents who were in the target range for the child that we were working with. So again, one of the things that we did was we segmented the market by, okay, we're going to do products for 4 to 6 year olds, 6 to 8 year olds, 8 to 10, and that sort of thing. And what that did was, not only did that help our software developers and our educators in what they did, and Dan, I loved your comment. I'm gonna give some thoughts about engineers and how they think different and things like that. But what it did was it also helped us understand what was the mindset of the parent when they went into that education section. So one of the things I used to love to do with buyers at the retailers was, because they were always trying to, they wanted to, you know, alphabetize the titles in the education section, or they wanted, you know, they had all these ideas for how they were going to organize the education section. And parents would, and what we learned was, parents would step into the section, they'd be completely lost. They wouldn't know the title that they were going to look for. They couldn't figure out what was going on. And so I used to say to the buyer, I would say, hey, now that we've established that it's not the child, but it's the parent who's buying the product, what's the one thing the parent knows when they walk into your education section? And they would get terrorized, and I'd go, it's the age of their kid. And they'd go, oh, so that's why you're getting us to organize by age grouping, because the reading product that you get for your 5-year-old is going to be for learning to read probably, whereas when you're looking at an 8 to 10-year-old, it's going to be more of a reading comprehension product. And we would design that way and do that sort of thing. So I'm gonna stop there with the learning company, and then I'm gonna shift to something that is somewhat similar to, you know, they do have the money in that. Long ago, before I went to the learning company, I went from a really remarkable company called Metaphor Computer Systems. That this is in the mid 80s. It was how I got involved in technology, because I am not a technical person by any means. I was told in the 8th grade, never go near a physics course, because my aptitude was, and this will show you the sign of the times, my aptitude was like a girl's when it came to physics. So Mercy, we're going to change that, right? Yeah, there you go. And so at Metaphor, the thing was, it was remarkable technology coming out of Xerox PARC, and they had developed a complete system that was for basically data mining, data warehousing, and doing in the 80s, data analytics that brand managers, salespeople, and others could do. And I won't go into all the details, but it was advanced enough that one fun story was, I'm walking through our offices with a friend of mine, and these offices happen to be now part of Google's headquarters, so they're right across the street from Google's headquarters. But I'm walking with this friend, and says, Stace, he goes, I can't believe it. I said, what? He goes, that's Steve Jobs. And I said, yeah, he's in here a lot. This was all pre-Macintosh, and he was looking at our technology because we had a graphical user interface that was coming. Xerox was the one, the Palo Alto Research Center actually created the graphical user interface, and Ethernet and a whole bunch of other things. And we had this graphical user interface, and we walk a little bit further, and my friend goes, this is unbelievable. And I said, what now, Deepak? And he goes, that's Bill Gates. And this was pre-Windows. And I said, yeah, he's here a lot too. But I got to go talk to somebody because they're not supposed to be here on the same day. Because back in that time frame, those two did not like each other at all. I mean, they did not like each other. But so that company is sort of a crash story in some respects. Remarkable technology. They eventually learned how to get into Fortune 50 companies. So we got into Procter & Gamble, Bank of America, Chevron, and it's where you've got this mission critical application using proprietary hardware and software, and you're this goofy little startup company when the answer is IBM or HP back in the day. And another time we can talk about how do you get your foot in the door and establish that. But the issue that I'm going to say as far as crashing there was they tied the hardware. We kept trying to get them to understand this is a software company, and one of the founders loved hardware. So the crash part of this is be careful sometimes with how much you fall in love with something, because this guy loved to manufacture. And we stayed in hardware, and that was the thing that probably made it the toughest when we could have been. If we'd been a software company, I think we would not have ultimately had to sell to IBM, which didn't have any clue how to use the technology, if you will. So Stacy, where are you going with this? So from there, as it's being sold, I decided that I was going to go into software, and I'm talking to this guy who was so strong on manufacturing, and he said, where are you going? And I said, well, I don't know, but I'm talking to a couple of different companies. And he said, there's a company I want you to talk to. You've forgotten more about marketing than they know, but they're doing what you keep trying to get us to do, which is to really understand the customer and then be market driven, not marketing driven. Okay, that's another crash and learn lesson that sometimes people don't get. They talk about marketing driven, and no, it's not marketing driven, it's market. Go back to that. The customer is the one who's got the money, and make sure you know who the true target audience is, because lots of times people mess up on that. So he says, I want you to go talk to this company. And I said, what do they make? And he said, disk drives. And I said, no way, no how. I'm not going into the disk drive business. I don't want to be in hardware, let alone a component that's buried deep inside a hardware sort of thing. And he said, no, just go down and talk to this guy, Finest Connor. And so I thought, okay, I will. So Finest Connor, I came to find out, was probably one of the best salespeople I will ever run into in my life, in that he convinced me to go and build the marketing department at Connor Peripherals. And just to give you a hint here, Connor, the idea was he was going to do low-cost disk drives. Horrible idea. Commodity idea sort of thing. And disk drives, for those of you here who don't even know what a disk drive is, because you're probably not used to that, it was the storage device that was in your PC back in the day. And back then, having 200 megabytes was a big deal. And so, I go down and talk with Finest, and he has this philosophy of, I'm going to sell it first, then I'm going to design it, and then I'm going to build it. Okay, now let me explain that. Because this all goes back to design thinking when you think about this, and this is one of the main things I want you all to think about or take away from my talk is, oftentimes design thinking will bail you out of those tough and difficult times and help you with your toughest problems, whether you're crashing or not crashing. And so what Finance did was he was going to do these low-cost disk drives, and he said, you know, it's not that I'm this brilliant guy and I saw laptop and notebook computers coming. He said, because this is the late 80s, this is like 89, sort of 90 timeframe. He said, I knew the guys down at Compact Computer down in Texas. I went down there with my engineers. So always take your engineers with you, marketing and salespeople. And he said, I started talking to him and I said, what are you guys working on? And they said, well, we're working on these luggable computers. And Finance said, well, do they have a disk drive in them? And they said, no. And he said, well, do you want a disk drive in there? And I said, of course we want a disk drive in there. And he said, well, why don't you have one? And they said, well, we can't find anything small enough. And he said, well, what size does it need to be? And so they gave him the spec for what size it needed to be. And then he said, you know, you said these things are luggable. How are they going to be, how are they going to be powered? Is it going to, and they said, well, it'll be a battery, but it'll also be plug in. He said, okay, so the drives have got to be really efficient on energy and power consumption. They're like, yeah. He said, now, if these things are luggable, does that mean people are going to throw them in the trunk of the car and the overhead bin of the plane and things like that? And they said, yeah, probably. And he said, okay, so I guess the drives have got to be really rugged too, right? Because back then you had this thing called shock that was an issue. And they said, yeah. And he said, okay, look, if I could build that drive for you, would you buy them? And they said, yeah, of course we'd buy them. He said, would you buy a lot of them? And they said, yeah, we'd buy a whole bunch. Matter of fact, we'd invest $10 million in your company if you could, if you could do that. And he turns to his engineer, who he's got with him, a guy named John Squires, and said, John, can you do that? John's just sitting there grinning. He goes, yep. And so first year, they did 90 million of revenue. Second year, they did 250 million of revenue. Okay, that's when I got there. And third year, we did 750. Fourth year, we did 1.3 billion of revenue. So at the time, probably the fastest growing company in U.S. history. That's been surpassed since then, obviously. But the whole idea is sell it. Okay, so he's doing his market research, understanding the target, that sort of thing. Then I'm going to design it. Okay, so it's basically design thinking, and then I'm gonna build it. Okay. I'm probably running low on time. So let me think
you still have 10 minutes.
Okay, good. All right. So now I'm going to give you another one. And this is going to be sort of a, where you're running into tough problems. Let's see, 4 years ago, I don't know how many of you all know Jerry Peng, but I ran into Jerry and he was representing a company in China called Tranlin. And Tranlin's got some remarkable technology, privately held. And their technology was where they make paper products like paper towels, napkins, toilet paper, but they don't use trees at all. They use the stalks from wheat that are basically waste on a Chinese farmer's field, and they pulp it just as they would a tree. And you can make a very nice paper out of that is really easily compostable, and saves trees. And then they also found that there was when you pulp a tree, you get this really nasty goo that they call black liquor that nobody can really do much of anything with other than either burn it at the pulping site and use it as a source of energy, or you throw it out and you got to find a way to dispose of it. And the engineers at this Chinese company, they found out that when you pulp wheat stalks, you actually get some really great nutrients that are extracted called fulvic acids that are biostimulants. And so literally it's sort of a form of fertilizer. And what they would do is not only would they buy these stalks from the farmers, pulp it, turn it into paper, but then they'd sell what had been a waste product as fertilizer back to the farmers. And you created this really wonderful, virtuous cycle that was remarkable. So they wanted to bring that technology. It was booming in China. They were being asked to open multiple factories in different provinces and things like that, privately held by a really remarkable guy named Chairman Li, who I called the Chinese Steve Jobs because he was just brilliant, did not have a college education, but Steve Jobs with a much nicer personality than Steve Jobs. And so one of the issues with this was the paper, when it came out, was brown, okay? And so it was, and I later came to call it sort of beige. And then if you're familiar with the color Navajo white, it really is very similar to that color. And this is, the lesson here is, if you can't fix it, feature it, okay? And so, so I'm with the Wegmans buyer, and he's looking at the paper product. And Wegmans does a remarkably large business in paper products, and they do their own, and they make a really nice Wegmans private label brand. And he's looking at this, and he's going, John, I love the story and everything else. He says, but your packaging sucks. He goes, you know, this isn't right. And he goes, you got to make this white. I'm not, my customers will hate brown toilet paper, you know. And so I leave very, very disheartened and that sort of thing. And I've pretty much given up on him. And in the meantime, I'm doing the market research, I'm checking things out, and I'm finding that, hey, guess what? There are, when you start talking to people, there are a lot of people, they don't mind it that the paper is that color. Matter of fact, they see it as a mark of authenticity, and that it really is different, and that it's truly made of something other than trees and that sort of thing. Because we could have bleached the paper out like everybody else does, but again, we didn't want to be using those chemicals and that sort of thing in the process. So I guess this buyer starts to hear that we're making some inroads, and we're getting in some places, and we're starting to do some things. Because again, you know, Mercy, going back to your issue about distribution, which I think is, you know, is a really tough thing. My company, or Tranlin, is wanting to compete with Procter & Gamble and Kimberly-Clark and Georgia Pacific, and I'm saying, guys, you know, come on, you know, we're dancing between the giants here, and we're going to get crushed. We got to find places we can go. But this buyer hears that we're doing all right, and so he calls up and he says, hey, you know, what's going on with your paper? And I said, well, we've been working on it hard, you know, we're making some progress. And he goes, well, what's going on with that crap packaging that you had? And I said, okay, I know you didn't like the package that I designed, but, you know, that was just to get the product over here. And we've done a lot of one-on-one interviews with customers, and let me show you the packaging that we have now. And he looks at it and he goes, wow. He goes, that's awesome. You know, he goes, and you guys didn't even have a paper towel, because in China, the concept of a paper towel is completely foreign. And so we ended up spending all this time developing a paper towel where we couldn't get to Bounty's absorbency, but we got ahead of the Georgia Pacific product and some things like that, and got up to some others. And I'm telling him about the paper towel, and he's going, okay. He goes, that's great. He goes, what about that brown? You got to fix that. I'm not, you know, and I said, Dave, I said, I'm not changing the color. We're leaving that as it is. And I got ready to explain all the market research and everything else. And I thought, so the lesson here is, sometimes it's better to just shut up and let there be silence and see what happens. And as you all can tell, I like to talk. So I'm so tempted to say something, and there's just dead silence on the other end of the phone. And it goes for about, and I'm like, it goes about like 30 seconds. And I'm thinking, I gotta say something. I'm like, shut up. And about a minute into it, he goes, okay. He goes, I love the packaging. You've got a full line now that I can bring in here. The story is remarkable, and you're telling it beautifully in the way you're presenting it. He goes, the color. He goes, okay, 2 out of 3, get that stuff in here, you know. And so we ultimately, on the crash thing, we ultimately ended up having to shut things down before I could get it into Wegmans, because what happened was the parent company had been guaranteeing a bunch of loans. It was privately held, had been guaranteeing a lot of loans to another company in China. At the same time that Tranlin is expanding very rapidly, very capital intensive, expensive business. And what happened was the other company went bankrupt. So Tranlin, at a time when it was getting ready to do its own IPO, raise a lot of money to be able to do the expansion in China and the US, it's got to be backing these loans of this other company. I'm not completely, between us, I'm not completely sure that the Chinese government wasn't somewhat behind that in some respects, in that they loved what they were doing, but they didn't have any control over this. And what ended up happening was, as a result, we had to shut down the US operation, and the company had to take some government money. And now it became, while it was not a large percentage, it became very much controlled by that particular province and that sort of thing. So there's some things you can control, some things you can't, but always keep an eye out for what, you know, for places that you can, that, you know, where things may crash.
John, maybe like 3 or 4 more minutes.
Yeah. Okay. So, I could go on, and I could talk to you about even a turkey can fly in a hurricane and some things like that, and lessons from there. But I'm going to give you one where, as the old guy in the room here, you may find a time, and you may have already, but you may find a time when personally you crash, okay? Because you've got so much coming at you, whether it's work, whether it's personal life, whether it's, you know, all sorts of things. You may find where it's just like, it's knocking you to your knees, okay? And I had an experience like that 10 years ago. And it was a combination of everything from some things with work, some things with family life. The IRS decided it wanted to do an audit, which I had never had happen. And even though I knew everything was fine, the amount of information that was wanted and having to try to gather that up at the same time that I was also selling my house and in the middle of a divorce was not a very easy thing, to do. And I'm not looking for sympathy on this. I'm going to give you 2 lessons that I had from this, and there are probably more. But one is, when something like that happens, and I don't know what anybody's faith is here, and whether you have faith or not, probably really isn't the point. In my case, I do, so it helped me tremendously. But, and Mercy, I see you nod your head. And so what's going on, and you too, Sarah, so thank you. What, you know, you step back and you sort of go, okay, God, or okay, higher power, or okay, whatever, or whatever, what are you trying to teach me here? You know, what is the lesson? What am I supposed to learn from this? Because there's something here. And as you think that through, you start to realize there are things that you're being taught. There are things that are going to make you stronger, that when you come out of it, you're going to be better for it. And I want you to have, one, you know, belief that things will get better and you'll come through it. Okay. But just, you know, hang in there. Don't panic, you know, as you know, in the stairwell story. And the other piece is, and this is particularly for the guys, okay? Don't hesitate to reach out to people. You will find that you've probably got more friends and more people that are willing to help you than you ever thought, okay? And in my situation, I had a handful of friends that are just unbelievable, okay? They're amazing. I mean, and some of these guys, even though I went to Darden of the North or Harvard Business School, and I went there expecting there were going to be a remarkable number of a-holes there, and we did have that factor, there was also an amazing set of people that were not only really smart and have done remarkable things, but they're just really good people. And these guys, I found out, while they wouldn't jump in front of a bullet coming at me because they have their own families, if they couldn't push me out of the way, they would stick their hand out to stop it. I mean, you will find you've got people in your life, and you'll be surprised. So don't hesitate. The women are typically better at this. So the guys often, we're going to man up, we're going to do it ourselves and everything else, and don't. Okay. So that's probably a good place to stop as far as just, hang in there. And then always, ask a lot of questions, and don't do what I do, which is talk too much. Listen, and you will find that there are remarkable insights that are coming, not only when you're asking, okay, what are you trying to teach me out there, but also what are other people trying to teach me, and what are the insights and learnings I can gain from them. And I'll stop there.
Awesome. Thank you so much, John. That was amazing. Those were great stories. I took notes on this actually. So I would love to open up the floor for questions. We have time for that. So does anyone have any questions for John?
Come on, somebody ask me a question so I don't feel.
They will. There's usually like a little 30-second lag, and they always come through with questions. So, all right, Mercy had her hand raised, and you guys can use the hand raising feature. I'll see it, or you can just chime in if nobody else is. But Mercy,
I just thank you so much for being so transparent and sharing your story. The question I have kind of centralizes your shifts between all of these different companies. How did you navigate just going into these different fields? So you started off with the education, then in the technology, and then in the paper towel company. Can you talk a little bit about like that transition? Did you have mentors that briefed you, or did you just do your own research to just learn more about the markets that you were entering?
Yeah, no, thank you for that question, because I think I've mentioned this to Hope, and because if I gave you all the different companies, one, you would think I was 100 years old, and two, that I can't keep a job. And one of those might be true, but I'm not 100 years old. Okay, so and you know what I'm going to tell you is, in the grand scheme of things, it comes down to, as I think about that, it comes down to this whole idea of really getting into the customer's head and really understanding and empathy. Okay, on the design thinking, you'll hear about empathy, and it is probably one of the things that I discovered when I was at Procter & Gamble. P&G was awesome. They treated me extremely well, moved me really fast, and they would, if you ask people at P&G sort of what differentiated me in some respects, they would probably say, well, yeah, he could do this and he could do that, but you know what, he could look at advertising and things like that, and he could go, that's gonna work, and it's more of, it's a combination of a sixth sense, but it's also in really understanding. And I'll say the sixth sense in that P&G, here I am, a 26-year-old bachelor, and they put me in charge of the two baby detergents, Dreft and Ivory Snow. And what do I know about young mothers and trying to get them to buy a product, for 2 or 3 months, and then realize that Tide will not melt their baby if they use it, sort of thing. But I could look at advertising copy and go, that's gonna work. But then later I found out that it was more, really getting into the heads and talking to people and finding out. And so, today, so making the switch to technology, the reason I could move from Procter & Gamble, and I forgot to mention there was a stop with Sierra Designs, which is a backpacking mountaineering company out. That's what got me out to the Bay Area in the first place. I'm doing that, and then I go to this technology company, and I know nothing about technology whatsoever, but their target audience was Procter & Gamble and brand management and things like that. And I was able to help them translate, don't show the technology, don't go in there and talk about, here's the query tool that's going into the spreadsheet tool that's all in the capsule and that sort of thing, because people don't get it. I said, I want you to show them, I know the sales districts for P&G, we're going to put some market share and phony shipment data and some other things in there. And then I want you to show it to these guys, because they were going to talk to the senior guys at Procter & Gamble. And I said, I know these guys, you know, I've met these guys, and I don't want you to talk about technology, just show them the reports. And this brilliant guy named David Liddell had been a chief scientist at Xerox PARC. He's looking at me like, but I said, David, you know, and he goes in there, sits down, starts showing this report. And one of the guys is watching, and he starts screaming at the other guy. He goes, I told you we have a problem in Pittsburgh, you know, and David's about to say, this is just made up. And he goes, shut up. This is remember the other lesson, shut up. And the next thing, you know, the other guy said, here, give me the mouse. I want to drive. And so he's got these guys hooked. Okay. So this isn't answering your question. So then, but it's understanding. And so then, you know, moving to things like disk drives and moving to educational software, where I did have young children at the time. And I put the product with my son, John, and I'm watching him play with this, and I'm thinking, oh man, how cool is this? Because there are not a whole lot of places where you can do good and really help people, and at the same time, you can make a lot of money, because educational software has great margins and that sort of thing. And then today, I'm actually working with a company here in Charlottesville called Ample Biosciences or Biosolutions, and it's working in the autoimmune space, and specifically lupus, and basically developing a way to take an MRI or a snapshot of a person's immune system, and then what are the meds and what are the therapies that you can use. And I know nothing about gene expression and genomics and things like that. But again, if you can be at what it's called a translator, where you can help with the brilliant minds that are out there, and in translating what the needs are and what the problems are, then that's what served me really well on this. Because what I do is, what I found is that I can understand the target audience, and then I can go to the brilliant software engineer, whoever it might be, and tell them what the problem is. And they say, oh, I can solve that really easily. And I'll go, I know you can solve this for you. I want you to solve this so that it's so easy that even I can use it, okay? Because we're not talking about you. I know you can solve it for you. I want you to solve it so that I can use it. And that's when the software engineers are awesome, because they sort of go, oh, you know, Stacy's right. I can solve this easily for me, but he's so dumb. This will be a challenge. And so that's sort of how I think I bounce around to those different things.
Thank you.
And it's probably a form of ADD. I got to be doing different things.
Who else has a question for John?
And I promise I'll make it a shorter answer if you ask a question. I lost Sarah. Sarah was gonna ask a question. She's probably off taking care of her children.
Yeah, she said she had a call she had to go to.
I was just going to quickly relate that I also got locked in a stairway when I worked in a high-rise building, and the thing I did differently from you is that I got stuck in the stairs like during normal working hours, but I think getting stuck in the stairway like just after normal working hours kind of helps you connect with the people who are already working late anyway. So I know I related. That's all.
Okay, good. That's good.
What's next for you, John? I know you're consulting companies right now locally, or?
Yeah, so right now I'm helping Ample, and you know, brilliant doctor and PhDs and that sort of thing. They don't have a lot of business experience, so I'm helping them with a combination of raising some money. They've done a remarkable job of, they've been in Charlottesville for about 7 years. Last year, they actually did $4 million of revenue, and they've all been self-funded with the development they're doing. They have not taken any money up until now, and so we're in the process of trying to help with that, because they've got a blood test that they're trying to develop and get out there. And again, just as Mercy, you know, the distribution issues and things like that, those often are some of the toughest problems to solve is, how do you take this great work that you've done and get it out into the hands of the right people and get people aware of it, sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm trying to help them with that. But again, it's different because it's, in this case, you're talking about physicians, you're talking about getting reimbursement from insurance companies and things like that, and it gets pretty complicated fast. But the good news is we don't need FDA approval to take it to market, which is a big help.
David, you have a question?
Yeah. First of all, thanks so much for your time today. And one of the things that struck me was just the emphasis on market research. And I cut my teeth in market research too, and I see a lot of firms not focusing as much on market research, or just either quantitatively or qualitatively, either one of them really. And I was just kind of curious on why that is, because kind of a consistent theme, a lot of what you talked about was sort of understanding, that customer, or understanding that market, as you sort of said. And I was just kind of curious on why there isn't as much of that in your perspective.
It's really interesting. When I first got to Silicon Valley, or got involved in technology, it was 1985. And then it was a group of really brilliant people who were creating hardware and software and throwing it at the marketing and salespeople and saying, here, go sell a gazillion of it. And people are looking at it kind of going, okay, well, what's it for? And over time, then you started getting the venture capitalists. I mean, I can remember being at Kleiner Perkins, and they're talking about, we got to get branding in here. And I'm thinking, you guys don't even know what branding is. I mean, you're sort of talking about it and things like that. But I think there's a natural tendency, and I'm guilty of this too, to think that, I know what's the right thing. And maybe taking it to Mercy's thing and educational software, if you want to get some really nasty drag out battles, get a bunch of people, executives together of an educational software company that are all parents of young children, and have the R&D people telling the sales and marketing folks, you are really a dumbass. The product ought to be this way. My child is gifted. Yeah, all our children are gifted, and it's like the product. And it's sort of like, it doesn't matter, what your personal opinion is. It's what the target audience is thinking and what they're doing. And it's really hard to remember that. So there are plenty of times where I've got to stop myself and say, hey, what I think is right isn't necessarily the way to go. I really got to look at not only all the data, and you're probably a whole lot better at looking at mounds of data and distilling things from it than I am. I'm much better at sort of talking to people and trying to tease out things. And this is where I left out one of the really important things, which is I talked about not using focus groups, but doing these one-on-one interviews. What we did was I'm sorry, the sun is doing what it's doing here. We made the product marketing folks, or we had the product marketing folks do the interviews, because I wanted them, if they saw a trail that they could go down that might have been totally off target, I wanted them to be able to do that, as opposed to I hire a moderator and they're going off a script and they're just going through the rote things. Because some of the best nuggets we ever got were when we went off script. There were things with parents, and I'll give you one on the technology side, where I was at a company called eHealth, or it was eHealth Insurance in the day, and it's now the largest private, if you will, or non-government portal for health insurance. If you go to eHealth, and this is back, 1999 sort of time frame, where, and we found that people were trying to compare health insurance plans side by side, and literally what they were having to do was they were printing out the plans and then lining them up on their living room floor. And we learned this again from talking to them one-on-one. And so I got the developers to make it so that you could compare 4 plans on the screen side by side. And we had this big frickin' button that, that was red and said compare. And I'm doing some user research where we're looking at something and it's completely not even thinking about the compare feature at all. We're looking at something else. And as I'm talking to this person, and unfortunately it was one of the first interviews of the morning, I go, wait, are you telling me that you'd like to be able to compare plans side by side? And the person said, oh yeah, I really would. And I said, well, do you see anywhere on there where you could do that? And the person is looking and they're looking and they go, no. And I'm like, wow, there's a big red compare button that's there. And so I decided I would ask the question the next 11 people who came in. 10 of the next 11 people did not see that feature or that they could do that. And so you go, okay, I thought I had this thing nailed. I didn't, so we went and we changed it and made it so that people could. But again, trying to answer your question, it's just always check your personal opinion at the door would be my comment on that.
Well, that is time, John. I really appreciate you coming in today and being so willing to just share your stories. And if you want to put your email or anything like that in chat for people to keep in touch with you, you're welcome to do that. I know you're on LinkedIn and all of that. So thank you. And then John, I will say this, we're going to do breakout rooms after this. And so if you want to chat a little bit more with Mercy or John or anyone else here, there'll be that opportunity at the end. So I wanted to go ahead now and move into announcements before we do that. So I'm going to start with our partners. So let's start with Carolina with CIC Community Investment Collaborative. Do you have anything you want to share, announcements?
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, thanks to Mercy and to John. What great stories both. So much to learn from John. So thank you for that. And yeah, just a quick announcement for CIC, Community Investment Collaborative. We are now accepting applications for the workshop for spring of 2021. If you know of anyone that is interested, I'll put the website there, or you can guide them to go and visit CIC's website. It will be virtual again until, I don't think it's going to be a hybrid version of it, but yeah, it will have to be virtual again. And I think that's it. That's the biggest announcement I have for today.
And that's the program that I know Mercy's in right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Right.
Very good. All right. What about SBDC? Linda, I think I saw you on here.
Yes. Oh, all right. Blacked out there for a second. Hi, everybody. Linda from the Central Virginia Small Business Development Center. We are winding down a little bit at year end, but we do still have some upcoming classes that might be of interest. For the first time in a long time, we're offering QuickBooks. So if anybody needs help with their bookkeeping and accounting, we're taking up to 10 people. So I will also put our events information in the chat box. We have two government contracting workshops in December, one proposal writing for the federal government and SWAM, which is Small Women and Minority Owned Business Certification for state and local contracting. And next year, we're gonna have all sorts of great stuff. So check out our calendar. We'll be adding things on a continuing basis, but we have lots of good stuff coming up in 2021. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Linda. I don't know if I see David on here. Anyone from the Batten Institute?
Hey, Hope. Jason's on.
Jason. Hi, Jason. Sorry I didn't see
Hey,
you.
how are you doing?
Great.
Well, first of all, I want to thank.
Talk nearly so much.
Yeah, I was lurking in the background there, John. But first of all, I want to give a big shout out to John because I've been in this position for coming up 5 years next year running the incubator, and John has been so unbelievably gracious with his time and energy and support of our entrepreneurs through the mentorship program that we run for these great founders. And so thank you, John, for all that you've done. He's had a pretty wide variety of different founders over the years, but just want to give everybody a heads up. Because this year has been virtual, which has been a lot different than in prior years, we will also do a virtual final presentation in mid-December. We don't have the date on that yet, but look for that to come out at some point. And of course, everybody's welcome to come and hear the final presentations. I veer away from pitching using that terminology because I really want this to be less about a performance and more about the credible work that all the founders have been doing, which has been really great.
Thank you so much, Jason. Good to see you.
Yeah, you too.
So I guess I'll represent CBIC unless Craig or someone else has something announcement wise. But the Charlottesville Business Innovation Council is an organization supporting the tech and innovation community here in Charlottesville. And we do not have any upcoming events. This event is one of our recurring highlights, as well as something called Tech on Tap, the second Tuesday of every month. Used to be at local watering holes. Now it's here in Zoom. But we have a newsletter that has not gone out this month. So we're in transition with that marketing scenario. But SteveilleInnovation.org is the link. The newsletter sign up is so easy. You just put in your name and email. And so typically this event is actually reminded to you twice a month when that newsletter comes out. So I will go ahead and say this too. This event, we take a break in December. So the next time we'll meet is January, the third. It's always the third Tuesday of the month, 8 to 10 a.m. So January will be the next one, and we'll run all through next year through November. And so if you need that reminder, I recommend put it on your calendar recurring, and then the Monday before, put a recurring reminder to sign up for it on Eventbrite. So now we'll close with announcements for the rest of you. So you can announce any upcoming events that you would want people to be aware of, or if you're hiring. So anybody hiring or upcoming events?
Hey everybody, Dave with Icarus Medical here. Marcy and John, this is awesome. And John, I just sent you a message to see if you're available to chat sometime. We're launching our own medical device, knee braces that don't require FDA approval, and we're going through the whole process of how to market this thing, starting social media from zero. And so we're hiring a VP of engineering, hiring mechanical engineers, biomedical engineers, and industrial designers, and salespeople. So Dave at IcarusMedical.com, right on the downtown mall, great place to work, and hope's been by a few times. Mm-hmm. And I'll put my email in the chat box here. So thanks for putting this together, Hope.
Yeah, thank you. And Dave was a former early stage speaker before the brace was even in production. So it's really cool to see where that's gone. So Alex,
definitely let's get together, Dave, because Ample is down in the Lewis and Clark building. So I'm often meeting people for coffee down on the mall. So.
Okay, great. Yeah, I just messaged you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right, Alex.
Hi, everyone. I live in Charlottesville, but I work for a nonprofit based in Shenandoah Valley, and we're in the process of launching an accelerator incubator in the spring. We've just closed the applications for participants in the accelerator for our companies, but we're now turning to recruiting mentors. So if you or anyone you know might be interested in working with some exciting startups in Shenandoah Valley, even if you're not living there, we do want to connect our companies with the best resources across the country. Please reach out to me either on LinkedIn, or we're also going to have an event this Thursday evening online if you're interested in learning more. And I'll drop the details on that in the chat. But thanks again, Hope, and John and Mercy. Yeah, thanks so much for the presentations. They were great.
Awesome. All right. Who else is hiring or has events? Anyone else? I know, speaking of engineers, I know a company looking for an engineer with optical experience. So if you know anyone, let me know. And yeah, anybody else? Okay. So we will, like I said, be back here in January. So let me explain how the breakouts work. And this is the purpose of utilizing